What is the real meaning behind the name Man Marked by Flames, and what is his identity? The man who saw the sight of the sun tree, that's what I believe to be the real meaning of Man Marked by Flames. The mysterious identity concealed behind this nickname could very well be Brook's former captain, Yorkie. This is Den, and I'm happy to see you all once again. Today I'm bringing you guys a very interesting perspective on the name Hinokizu Otoko, what we all call Man Marked by Flames. This new meaning we found can turn all the theories we have on him upside down. And with that, the identity of the mysterious character could be revealed. Without further ado, let's get into this. So, Hinokizu Otoko. The name is written in katakana, which in Japanese doesn't really define a specific meaning behind the name, so it's basically open to interpretation. When you pronounce Hinokizu no Otoko, you can only guess what the name means, and the first thing that comes to mind is Man Marked by Flames, someone who got scarred by fire. This is why Aokiji thought that they were talking about him, but in reality no one saw what the Man Marked by Flames looks like. They just know the nickname he goes by, assuming it's a burn scar. That honestly feels like Oda hinting at us that the name actually has a different meaning, and it's not someone with a burn scar in general, contrary to what most people think. So if we break down the name in a different way, Hinoki can mean sun tree, Hi meaning sun, no meaning of, and then Ki meaning tree. Zu can mean sight or seen, and Otoko man. So the name can actually be translated to the man who saw the sight or seen of the sun tree. As you've probably realised by now, this connects to the sun tree Eve, which is located exactly above Fishman Island. Fishman Island is where the last poneglyph originally was before getting moved and ended up in the hands of the Man Marked by Flames. We also know that anyone who sails near him gets swallowed by giant whirlpools, another possible tie to Fishman Island because we have seen the Fishman Karai can make whirlpools. Lafitte suggesting a devil fruit as the cause makes me think that yet it's another misdirection by Oda to cover up the possibility that it's not a devil fruit, but something else that causes the whirlpools. With all this in mind, let's take a look at Yorkie, Brook's former captain. He has two face tattoos, one of which is upside down, and when taken individually, they look like the katakana Hi, present in Hinokizu no Otoko. If you were to flip one around and combine them, you would then obtain the kanji Hi, which stands for sun. This fits really well with the new meaning of the name I previously stated, giving a new perspective that could link the name to Yorkie. Brook's skull has a crack in it that looks like the hiragana character, Hi instead, representing the duality between katakana and hiragana, the two basic writing systems of Japanese. That crack is also the one that allowed him to open up his skull and store the poneglyph rubbings inside, which could potentially be foreshadowing for Yorkie's involvement with the final missing poneglyph. If we now go back and take a look at Brook's flashback again, we can see that after coming out of a certain forest, Yorkie and the crew had contracted an incurable disease. Deciding not to spread it, Yorkie took off with the infected crewmates, hoping to pass through the calm belt, as we saw in the story. The disease they contracted looks a lot like the tree fever that affected some of the islands in the Grand Line 400 years ago, and the way to cure it was to extract a substance called conine from the kona tree, a tree very likely to be found in big forests according to Noland. So when Yorkie took off for the calm belt, there's a chance that he was found by some fishermen who were passing through, saw them all sick, and decided to take them to Fishman Island to see if they could save them. The problem here is that they would need to get their ship coated right then and there. The perfect fisherman to do all that would have been Tom, who may have been there because he was researching a way to keep monsters away from boats, something he later implemented in the sea train. The calm belt was a perfect place for this type of research. It's filled with sea monsters. He was 25 years old at the time, so strong enough to carry a boat by hand and skilled enough to coat it. Tom is also a cowfish, and it matches with the Rumbar Pirates' Jolly Roger, which is a cow/bull. This can also be a parallel to Caribou's ship, getting transported by the cow seeking Mu when they were trying to follow Luffy. A coated ship carried by a cow seafolk. This also reminds me of when Rayleigh was saved by Hachi, yet another parallel of a fishman saving a human. Back to the point. When Tom found Yorkie and the crew, he decided to take them back with him to Fishman Island to see if they could be cured. His brother Den is a sea forest researcher, and at the time, even though he's 10 years old, he could have been pretty knowledgeable about the sea forest, which by his own description is a mysterious place, and the reason why he lives there is to research it. So it's possible he was researching it in the past also. Additionally, he mentions that the blessed sun tree, Eve, allows the coral to flourish and make the fish and whales gather around, and the whales all know where the sea life is most fertile. So So it really feels like the sunlight from the tree in general perhaps has some sort of special property. So whether Yorkie had tree fever or another type of disease, it's very likely that a cure could be found in the sea forest. It could also be the case that something special might have happened, because this is a really close parallel with Dr. HeroLucas. Both had an incurable disease, and with the interpretation, the man who saw the sight of the sun tree, assuming that that's Yorkie, the two would also share the sight of trees. HeroLucas was cured by seeing the sakura trees, and maybe Yorkie was cured by the sun tree, since we've seen that it has some sort of effect on the sea forest. While on Fishman Island, Yorkie could have learned the Fishman Karate, which would explain the ability to create whirlpools. He also missed half of his crew, which could have then been replaced with fishmen, who were again able to create whirlpools. It's also very interesting to think about, because Fisher Tiger was around 8 at the time, and was later known as the Adventurer, so maybe he started sailing at a very young age under Yorkie and explored the world with him. Eventually, he somehow ended up being captured by the Celestial Dragons and later formed the Sun Pirates after escaping. But we don't actually know the reason he chose the sun as the symbol for his Jolly Roger. We just know that the symbol was used to replace the Celestial Dragon slave mark. So obviously it looks like a bit of a Nika symbol or a liberation symbol, but it's not explicitly canonically been stated yet. There's also his nickname, which is related to the sun, as previously stated. Another detail that most people have missed is that when Yorkie took off with his 6 crewmates, he sailed away with the Rumbar pirate ship. Brooke and the rest who were left behind had to obtain a new ship to resume their journey. The sails of that first ship were pitch black, matching the ones from the man marked by flames. Yet another tie. We should also check out the cover story of chapter 631, where it's very strongly hinted that the man talking with Crocus could actually be Yorkie. This cover story is part of a series called From the Decks of the World, where we see each person who has met with a Straw Hat before receiving the news of their comeback after the time skip. In Brooke's case, there was no way for either Yorkie or Crocus to know about him, since his poster had remained the same for the past 50 years. But this time, the news crew delivered the updated poster, which is basically a confirmation that he was alive and he was part of the Straw Hat's crew. So it's likely that when Yorkie saw the news, he immediately went to tell Crocus about him, bringing some sake to celebrate as a tribute for the song that he loved, Vykthor maybe. You can see the newspaper on the top of the table of the left side of the panel. As we can see in the background, Laboon looks very happy to see whoever this is in the cover story, further suggesting it is our boy Yorkie. We can find a connection through Lafitte, probably since he was from the West Blue, just like the Rumbar Pirates. And if you guys remember, there's a small detail that we have been given at Saba Odi in the slave auction. The first person that was going to be sold off was a pirate from a long line of musicians who could play all sorts of instruments that came from Torona in the West Blue. He was also an expert winemaker, and in Japanese sake it's usually used with alcoholic beverages, which again reminds me of Bink sake. Lafitte rocks a cane, just like Brooke, and he's a tap dancer, something close to music which could suggest yet another connection there. So Lafitte being the one who speaks mostly and gives the most detail about the man marked by flames, this could be a nod from Oda, particularly as they're from the West Blue. It's also worth noting that Yorkie's bounty was purposely hidden from us for whatever reason, and when he was about to die he showed strong resolution and will, which is super important because that's what might have helped him go through the ordeal he was just in. Lastly, the final words that Brooke exchanged with Yorkie might truly be special. We're parting ways, but this doesn't have to be the end. We'll reunite again, okay, Captain? Because this could be the perfect setup for when Yorkie will reappear in front of us again, as an old man making a big surprise and meeting Brooke again. The relationship with Fishman that he developed will also help to bring Jinbei into the story more, making it all come full circle. He also brought Big Mama Poneglyph, similar to how the man marked by flames might have moved the road Poneglyph. Either way, that's it folks. With this video I mainly wanted to share this new meaning of Hinakizu Otoko that I've found, because it opens up a whole lot of new possibilities, broadening the perspective we all have on this mystery, and hopefully it provides a new path for somebody to think about. With that in mind, I found a lot of elements that could connect back to Yorkie, and I am wanting to bring all those points to your attention. Other than that, hope you liked what I brought to you today. Remember to like if you like the video, sub if you want more nice finds like this one, and most importantly, share the video so that the information spreads around. I can't wait to read all the theories you guys come up with and the possibilities that you see with your brilliant minds. I'll be waiting for you in the comments section. If you've made it this far, you've just received a fresh pair of socks, brand new, second hand. Let me know where you want them. Right, peace. Hello there, it's Den Kushi, and we're here to blow some minds with a little spicy theory that holds so much weight it's got Capone sweating. Emu wants to drain Nefertari life force, and the reasons why can be found by looking at Mihawk and Perona, a deep parallel to Joy Boy and Emu Neurona. However, that's not all. By looking at Mihawk's connections to Emu, we stumbled across a crazy spicy secret that we're finally gonna try and solve. Oda just revealed some original One Piece designs and inspirations from decades back, and what do you know, it featured vampires. Not just vampires, but werewolves and the whole spooky vibe, so we thought it was a good time to dust off this classic theory and explore the connections surrounding one of the most popular waifus in the One Piece world. We're about to suck every drop of blood out of this vampire video, revealing all you need to know if you plan on draining Nefertari life force. So without further ado, put a stake in that subscribe button and let's get into this. Alrighty then, so to start, ask yourself, what makes blood types so important in One Piece, and why does Oda give them to almost every character? Will Stussy's bite have an effect on Lucci later on in the story? What's Emu Neurona got to do with Perona? Why does Rayleigh and Shaki's name, when put together, make the name of Mihawk's Island in katakana? Remember, the weakness to vampires is silver, and Rayleigh's name is Silver. Well, across the vast universe of One Piece, myths and fables of our own world have been alluded to countless times. One of those being the myth of the vampire. Throughout the story, we've seen multiple signs and symbols across many arcs and characters that reflect back to vampires. Prime example, of course, being Dracula Mihawk and his character design. But it doesn't end there though, as we've also got characters like Perona, Shaki, Stussy, and Rayleigh that all reflect different aspects of vampirism. But also, we need to look past individual characters and focus on the symbols that are associated with vampires. The cross, immortality, morality, power, eternal youth, bats, and the underworld, just to name a few in the story. But what makes the vampire motif so important to Emu? To answer this, we dive deeper into some of the examples, starting with the most obvious one I already mentioned, Dracula Mihawk. He rides a coughing across the waters that emanates a green flame, has a pale skin and special eyes that we see also with Emu. His appearance reminds us of the classic cartoon vampire, with the pointed facial hair and decorative way in which he dresses. So you can see the reflection of Dracula in the character Mihawk pretty easily, right? Mihawk's character is absolutely full of symbolic references to the Prince of Darkness, Dracula. The cross being the most prominent with him, but also the castle and island he calls home, Kurigana Island. Who else lives on this island? Perona. Another character with strong ties to vampiric symbols, those being the underworld and bats particularly. Perona, Mihawk's counterpart, is as pale as he is, has a bat tattoo and shares a name very similar to Emu's family title, Neurona. Let's not forget that some of the earliest mail to be delivered that we found out in One Piece was delivered by bats, from Marijwa if I'm not mistaken. The sun plays a big part in the One Piece story, and just so happens Perona is usually seen holding an umbrella. Very weird, but it doesn't really matter anyway because Gloom Island is always dark, right? So there might be relevance there. Her character style is Halloween based and her abilities also tied to ghosts, matching the spooky vibe of Gloom Island, and tying pretty directly into Emu's abilities, which we'll get into. In Thriller Bark, we see a bunch of vampiric references, such as Chopper showing the cross to Brook, and Usopp talking about not having a reflection in the mirror. This is as direct as you can get to making references to vampires. The Thriller Bark arc, spanning just under about 50 chapters, is rich with gothic and vampiric themes, Halloween vibes, and the island itself is covered in zombie soldiers. The shadow-stealing ability of Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria's Kage no Mi powers allow him to manipulate shadows, similar to how a vampire might control thralls. The relationship between Hogback and Sindri, and the reanimation of Sindri as a zombie, reflects themes of unnatural resurrection possession and control also, which might tie into Emu. Absalom's obsession with Nami parallels the stereotypical vampire's fixation on a chosen victim, usually a youthful, attractive woman. If that wasn't enough vampire juice, then just take a look at Mihawk's potential parents, Rayleigh and Shaki. Yeah, I said it. As I mentioned, Rayleigh's name is Silver, an obvious nod to the weakness of vampires, werewolves, etc. Mihawk was introduced in chapter 50 and Rayleigh in chapter 500. Shaki is in her 60s, but she looks pretty damn young for a One Piece character of that age, and again shares that weird pale look. 42 years ago, Shaki renounced her life as a pirate and left Amazon Lily. After the event in Amazon Lily with Blackbeard, where we got the reveal of Shaki's true identity, it was heavily implied that the man she left Amazon Lily for was Rayleigh. But what if she had another reason for leaving Amazon Lily? Her son, Dracula Mihawk, a boy from an island where only girls are allowed. Mihawk is 43 years old. Shaki left with Rayleigh 42 years ago, meaning Mihawk would have been 1 year old. We know the Roger pirates referenced having another child on board the ship years before Oden's children were brought on board the Oro Jackson. Note in that same flashback, Rayleigh wears a coat with a floral type pattern similar to what we see Mihawk wearing, and Shaki's real name, Shakuyaku, means peony, a flower similar to a lot of the other women we see in Amazon Lily's names. Rayleigh's epithet is the Dark King, and as referenced above, one of the more popular names for referring to Dracula is the Prince of Darkness or Dark Prince, pushing the familial connections that little bit further. This would also explain why there seems to be such a long-standing rivalry between Shanks and Mihawk. Perhaps this rivalry began long ago on Roger's ship, which we know is the case with Shanks, and also Buggy, who Mihawk now sits beside. In terms of physical characteristics, there are also similar hair designs as both Rayleigh and Shaki. Furthermore, Rayleigh is a proficient user of all haki types, and teaches Luffy how to detect haki. Shaki seems to be more inclined to use observation haki, and it's explicitly shown that she's good at reading people. What was Mihawk originally known as in the story? The Clairvoyant. Also, if we look at the island Mihawk calls home, Kuragana, the katakana is the same as if you mix Silver's Rayleigh and Shakuyaku. Due to the nature of the world in One Piece, it's not surprising that Mihawk was forced to hide his father's name, and he isn't the first character to have done this. For example, we can think of Cutty Flam and Frankie. Lastly, it's worth noting drinking alcohol is something all three are often shown to do, and you know, Shaki owns the bar. Recently, we've just seen Rayleigh getting really drunk as he hears Vegapunk's big final message. But really, this is nothing compared to what happens when you step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Let's go back to Mihawk and Perona and take a deeper look so we can understand why Oda included all of this. Mihawk and Perona are the epitome of the vampiric theme in One Piece, but they also parallel Emu, Joy Boy, and Lily. We can see this very clearly through Perona, for example. Mihawk's counterpart, Perona, known for her devil fruit abilities and gothic aesthetic, appears to be a key character to the One Piece narrative. It's possible Perona and Emu share a deeper connection, potentially through lineage, maybe hidden motives, or even a direct influence from Emu. Perona's epithet is Ghost Princess, denoting royalty, and like Emu, she also wears a crown. However, this time also features the most important symbol in the entire story, in my opinion. Notably, this is the mantle for Yoru also. You can check out any older video of mine, and I'll probably be talking about that symbol at some point. It was what started me as a creator on YouTube, so just let me know if you've got any questions. Perona's debut is chapter 443, titled Thriller Bark, which is the island that encapsulates all these vibes, and the cover page is God Enel standing next to a huge explosion, reminiscent of the Lalesia incident. Oda, being the genius he is, made Perona 160 centimeters tall. Can anyone guess why? It's because it gives us the Holy 16 with Dofi, Lalesia, and, you know, there's a few other examples in the story. So again, it ties back to this divine image of Emu. Perona's partner is Mihawk, who I believe parallels Joy Boy. Oda even include Emu vibes in Mihawk's name. Take the first two letters, spin them round, and now you have Hawk. Of course, there's also Perona's name, which literally rhymes with Emu's family name, Nerona. Perona possesses the Horo Horo no Mi, a paramecia type devil fruit that allows her to produce ghosts capable of various effects, including inducing profound depression in her enemies. Key abilities include negative hollows, which can cause targets to feel overwhelmingly negative, mini hollows for reconnaissance, and astral projection, allowing Perona to separate her spirit from her body. In comparison, I have long speculated Emu's abilities tied to fear and negativity also. She spies on her enemies through Dendem Mushies for reconnaissance, as theorized by Dire Regulus, and recently we saw the Gorosei members astrally project to Egghead, potentially separating their soul from their body. If that isn't enough, then the Horo Nomi looks like 5 silhouettes with strange eyes, mimicking pretty much exactly what Sabo saw of the Gorosei in the throne room. Another angle to consider is the connection through abilities and influence. Emu's potential control over life and death, hinted at by their command over the world government, might align with Perona's ghostly abilities. Perona's astral projection could be a diluted form of a more powerful ability possessed by Emu, and we've speculated quite a lot in the past that Devil Fruit powers might evolve or degrade over generations. Finally, Emu ties to the ancient secrets, which Perona also shares. For example, through Yoru, a blade I've talked about before as probably being Joy Boys, having a deep, rich history with Wano, and there's probably also a long history with this situation and Gloom Island. For example, with the humans that were warring there and the human drills that have since learned how to fight, which are all monkeys as well, which ties back to Joy Boy, right? One possible connection between Perona and Emu could be through lineage and heritage. Emu's mysterious nature and long-standing position suggests ties to the Void Century, a period crucial to the series' lore. Perona's gothic and somewhat timeless appearance hints at an unusual background, potentially linking her to ancient times. It is just speculation, but we could think about the situation with Perona being a descendant or a relative of the Nerona family, which would explain why Oda gave us the clue in her name, Perona. This connection could explain her unique abilities and appearance, positioning her as an unknowing heir to a significant legacy, similar to Vivi and the Nefertari family. After all, Gloom Island is spooky as chuff and has some weird, mysterious history, like I mentioned with the monkeys, so I imagine by the end of the story, Oda will have Gloom Island restored, or the castle restored, similar to how Kureha moved up to the sort of Pangaea parallel and castle in Drum Island, right? What this tells us is that Perona and Mihawk are in fact an important parallel of Joy Boy and Emu, and also that all of these vampiric connections we see in One Piece are actually super relevant to what happened back in the day. Additionally, it may mean there's a significant feature of blood or blood types in One Piece that can be inherited and is vitally important. We've seen multiple instances of blood transfusions, as well as compatibility of blood types and genetics, the majority of which featured in Fishman Island, suggesting the creation of fishmen involves some manipulation of blood, which personally I also believe is the case for Poseidon. I believe Shirahoshi's grandmother was impregnated with Seeking lineage or blood, which I do have a video on if you want to check that out. So what is the big secret Oda's hiding, and why did he so thoroughly include blood types and give them to all these characters? The answer likely ties into the checkered fate theme we see throughout One Piece. If you're not familiar with what checkered fate is, it simply refers to the idea that key figures of the One Piece world, particularly from the Void Century, have their wills continued by people in the present day. And as such, some situations and incidents repeat themselves, broadly speaking. So in the present day, we have the Egghead incident, which highlighted the sun god Nika. 38 years ago, we have the God Valley incident, with God being in the name of the incident. And 38 years before that, we have the Carmel incident when she freed the giants by pretending to be a nun and pulling off some fake god vibes alongside the world government by making the sun shine down on her. Naturally, blood ties into lineage, as it's inherited and usually shared by an entire family. In almost all cases, the blood type, like in the real world, is directly inherited by the person's ancestors, leading us to wonder at some unconfirmed connections, such as Ryuma and Zoro both sharing the same blood type XF. Interestingly, there are exceptions to this rule, however, and by the looks of these particular characters and knowing Oda, these could hide secret family ties that are key to big reveals at the end of the story. If you wanted to look deeper into that, Kiku is a very interesting example, and it could be that Kiku is actually royalty, but it was just never explicitly stated, or it was hidden in the story. Now, going back to Rayleigh and Shaki, the reader can see a relationship between two characters where the female practically has a terminal illness. We saw this with Kaya and Usopp. We saw this with Kuma and Ginny. We see this with Boa and Luffy, and with Gloriosa and a mysterious male, who, by the way, is Zebek. The vampiric Stussy mentions her love for Whitebeard, and he dies. Hogback and Sindri are another eerie connection here. When you add this to the fact we've seen a few females sacrificed as well, such as the girl on the altar at Skypiea, or the girl that the Satanist had tried to sacrifice, it becomes clear Oda has something going on. Another crucial thing to notice is both times the women were rescued from being sacrificed, in one instance by the Joy Boy figure Nolan. So, what does this tell us? It ties back to Imu and Lily, and it's Oda foreshadowing there was an important relationship between the two that ties to their blood or bloodline. Some terminal illness was developed, and then Lily was likely rescued by Joy Boy. I've extensively covered my thoughts on Lily getting love sickness and founding Amazon Lily, so if you want more on that, just check out the Amazon D Lily video. But for now, we're going to focus on why the Nefertari bloodline was so important to Imu. Imu is often linked to eternal youth, the underworld, power, and immortality. We recently saw Lily in a painting, an idea that's used in a popular novel, Dorian Gray, to sustain his eternal youth. Perhaps Imu is feeding off these females' life force to sustain herself. A blood transfusion was used to save Luffy's life, which could be a reverse of this. Vivi was recently kidnapped by the world government, reinforcing the fact that it's particularly Nefertari bloodlines that Imu seeks after. Interestingly, Ginny appears to have some pretty unique traits, has no information on her lineage, and was an important character to the revolution, and Imu sought her out as a wife for some strange reason. This suggests to me at least, Ginny, like Lily, has some unique value that Imu finds important. I'm pretty sure this ties to their bloodline, but it's also worth noting Lily and Ginny connect to Nika, so maybe that is also what partly ties these two into what Imu wants from them. Historically, lineage seems crucial in ancient civilizations for creating powerful beings or artifacts in One Piece, thus may be integral to the ancient weapons, Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus. 3-Day Trip and some others speculate Nefertaris are connected to these ancient weapons, and we know Momo is connected to Pluton. Pluton, the earth weapon, which is likely through the Kazuki lineage, Shirahoshi to Poseidon, likely through her mermaid lineage, and Uranus to Imu, the heavenly weapon, which we're yet to get more details on. This lineage is likely dictated by bloodlines and blood types, which may be why Oda gave us all that strange info on Fishman genetics and blood during Fishman Island. Socially and politically, blood types might symbolize hierarchies and prejudices. Certain blood types could be considered superior, influencing division between the OG humans and the newer races, such as Fishmen, etc, Mink. The world nobles or celestial dragons might deem their blood type superior, justifying their divine right to rule, or more likely their use to Imu. Considering how prevalent this whole vampire vibe is, I do think that Oda might use this blood to play a central role in the endgame. Lily was recently revealed to be a D member, and so maybe Imu requires specific blood types in order to carry out her plan, or sustain herself perpetually, such as the blood of the D clan. Or maybe it's the other way round, and the blood from the D clan members is the key to defeating Imu. You know how Voldemort tried to unalive Harry, but instead made himself more vulnerable. That's the vibe I'm referencing. Luffy receives blood, recovering his lifespan issues and making him stronger, but when Imu does it, she will become vulnerable. Alternatively, it may just be a matter that Imu runs out of blood or life force and, similar to a vampire, becomes vulnerable. Okay, but let me just be straight up. I personally think it's actually all of these. I think the reason why Luffy and Vivi are so important is not just because of one distinct blood trait, but many. For example, being the second sovereign might be a definitive trait of your lineage. Having a relationship with the ancient weapons might be another factor that's needed. Being from a certain clan or family may be another feature that's needed. And altogether, this creates this Rinnegan situation that we saw in Naruto, where over generations and generations, some superpower can be made by putting together loads of individual elements. Now, to finish off, I have a confession to make. Myself and members from TLA have been around the theory community for years. We are on call or in DM most days discussing some theory or another, and it's very rare we ever hit a complete dead end. However, I've looked high and low, east and west, and I cannot for the life of me work out what Oda is cooking up with these blood types. IRL blood types can be linked to personality traits, and there is a little bit of that in One Piece so far. For example, many swordsmen in the story have XF blood. That said, I think there's much more to it, such as some indication of royalty or particular clans from the original ancient kingdom. So please, if you have any thoughts or solutions to the blood type riddle, throw them at the wall and see what sticks. I'd love to get a little more insight into the whole blood type agenda Oda has going on. So, there it is, folks. Wish I could give you a more definitive and decent answer to what the blood types specifically mean, but for now we can focus on the connection between Perona and Neurona and see where that leads. Leave a comment if you wanted to ask any questions or correct me, as sometimes I am just human and I can make mistakes. If you're new to the channel, then hello. My name's Kushi. I make One Piece theories, a few of which have collected some big dubs since we started, and you can also find us streaming alongside the Frontline of the theory community on the Last Arc YouTube channel. If you wanted to share your own theories, you're welcome to join the Discord or DM me directly, and if you wanted an idea incorporated in a video, feel free to bring it up. You can support us on Patreon or become a member if you want to join the cause, and we'll get these videos longer and more detailed, which we've been trying to do for a minute, so the support is super appreciated. We have some pretty big reveals coming soon too, maybe including some 2-hour videos, but I won't say too much on that, but keep sub for that. Sharing is caring, say no to pugs, and adios. Sup, internet people, it's Kushi, and today we have another insane theory to sink our teeth into. By the time all the parts come together and the video ends, you'll be left scratching your head wondering if Oda is actually a god himself, or your money back, I think. Now, hit the sub button and let's dive straight into the intro. Ever notice how Usopp uses his imagination to lie when he's scared? It comes true and then people call him a god. Buggy uses his imagination when he's scared by bluffing, highlighted by his island being called Empty Bluffs Island. However, these bluffs always come true, and he's also called a god. Bonnie believed in sun god Nika, and she can seemingly use her imagination to distort her physique, with Luffy encouraging her to keep doing it in Egghead. Speaking of Luffy, he was revealed to have the sun god Nika fruit, and again we see imagination being used to change the reality around him. So, what's with all these gods? Well, we're about to crack open Roger's egg and scoop the yolk out of this one. Okay, so this video will reveal how in One Piece Oda has made gods synonymous with energy, resources, pollution, technology, and power since chapter 1 of the story. Gods in One Piece are much more than just some powerful people from ancient times, and instead they are the cornerstones for the history and balance of the One Piece world, with Oda integrating them consistently throughout the story. Now, one of, if not the most central theme in One Piece is what it means to be human. This is contrasted in the story by what it means to be a god. Luffy has a god devil fruit, but acts as if he has no interest in power. Oppositely, Emu sits atop the world and demands complete power. A theme tying to power that's becoming more prominent as the story draws to a close is energy. There are lots of connections between God and energy in One Piece, particularly in the recent Egghead arc, with the Mother Flame, which also showed energy can not only be used to provide power, but it can also be weaponized. In our own world, energy is currently a big topic, particularly surrounding the natural resources that are expended in the process. This is reflected in One Piece by the ancient inhabitants of the moon that descended to the blue planet after running out of resources, tying energy back to resources and mass migration in the story. Again, in our own world, pollution can be a product of harvesting energy. We see this in the One Piece world through strange and fatal diseases such as amber lead syndrome, a sickness that is the product of mining amber lead. This disease is local to the North Blue, and by looking at the location of the other diseases in the story, the reader can discover connections between different locations, their respective gods, and even ties to individual Gorosei members, but we'll get get into that later. The fire thief motif is something we see repeatedly through the story as well. The fire thief motif is the notion that humans get some godly power not meant for them and destroy themselves with it. Considering how heavily it features in the story, what this probably means from Oda is humans got hold of some sort of god powers thousands of years ago and advanced too far, which you'll see later ties back to Emu. Technology is often closely tied to energy, and we also see it in the story used for destructive purposes, as I mentioned. It's stated the world government scrubbed any traces of the ancient kingdom since its defeat, likely specifically referring to these advanced technologies and adding to the fire thief motif. Additionally, technology may have been used to extend life. Mortality and immortality are key themes in the story and will likely come up again around Luffy's lifespan repeatedly being depleted. Also, let's not forget many believe Emu to have extended life. Characters like Kureha highlight mysterious secrets around youth, while Giola talks about immortality in heaven with her art fruit connecting us back to godhood again. Conversely, Oda includes elements that reduce lifespan, such as the Amber-Led syndrome and the hormones used by Ivankov to treat Luffy. Alright, pause. I see some people at the back there thinking, what the chuff is this guy actually talking about? Simply put, I'm saying Oda is going to reveal a ton of spicy mysteries in One Piece through the OG gods that lived in the One Piece world thousands of years ago. And by looking at the foreshadowing already dropped in the story, we can pretty much tell who these gods are today, what powers they had, what the treasure at Laugh Tale is, and subsequently what Emu's beef is. Okay, so you know how One Piece incorporates various references to godlike figures throughout its story, of course. Let's take Enel, for example, who proclaims himself a god and has a lightning or thunder devil fruit. He contrasts Ganfall, the former ruler of Skypiea and previous so-called god, a person with no mystical abilities whatsoever that we were shown. An early clue from Oda that godhood is not actually about power. Remember, Whitebeard was revered as a god by his crew for his immense strength and explicitly his earth-based devil fruit, further adding to the symbolism, and again, this guy is a good dude, not seeking power. The mysterious figure Im-sama is also regarded as a god, however seeks absolute power and influence, and is portrayed as the villain of the story. There's dozens of other references to gods, from Luffy's Nika reveal in Wano to more subtle examples such as a Japanese banner in Jinbei's cover story that's a sea god, but we'll get into that. The example I do have to bring up though is in a flashback during the Skypiea arc, when a girl is offered for sacrifice on an altar. The name of 4 gods were given, which included the sun god, rain god, forest god, and earth god. In chapter 1044, Luffy was revealed to have the sun god fruit, making it seem far more likely that Skypiea gods could actually be a real thing, or at least connect in some deeper way. Some references are made to a sea god. The first instance we see this explicitly is during the Davy Back fight, where Foxy brings his name up. We see another reference later in Jinbei's cover story, as I mentioned, with a banner that says, "Offering for the sea god." Most Western fans probably miss stuff like this because it's a cover story and the actual text isn't translated, I don't think, in the official. Interestingly, Wadatsumi discovers this offering and eats it, and his epithet is the sea god. He returns the favour by throwing an underwater kingdom onto land, which could be a parallel that Emu accepted an offering that wasn't meant for her and raised a kingdom up onto the red line. Or something. Now, a very interesting case is during the Whole Cake arc, where we see Mother Carmel is stylized as a nun and presented as a devout follower of God, which she later reveals serves as a strategic maneuver by the world government. You could probably go as far as to call this a false prophet, but anywho, not important. Carmel runs an orphanage under the guise of a benevolent nun, caring for children and earning the trust and admiration of those around her, as we all know. This image of a holy charitable figure is used to conceal her true intentions and sinister motives. This facade allows Carmel to operate covertly, facilitating her role in supplying children, the reason for which I shall touch on a little later. So if you're not already picking up what I am putting down, this all sounds very much like Emu. Carmel's holy, mothering, soul-bound, evil ways parallel Emu strongly. And Carmel is known as the Mountain Witch. At the very start of the story, Shanks' crew defeated Higuma, who is a mountain bandit. Odin, a parallel of Joy Boy, defeated the mountain god White Boar. And later I'll go on to explain that Emu is tied to Flevence in the North Blue, the White City, and I will explain how Flevence also ties to Topman, who is a boar, giving us a boar from a white city or a white boar. So, what's with all these mountain and white boar references? It's basically because Oda uses these as symbols for the Earth God, and Emu is the Earth God. At the very start of the story, Shanks, with the Straw Hat, an analogue of Joy Boy, defeated the mountain bandit, Higuma, who's an analogue for Emu, demonstrating how Oda had this going from literally chapter 1 in the story. Still don't believe me? Well, the castle at Marijwa is called Pangaea, which is a theorized real-world supercontinent on Earth that broke up over hundreds of millions of years, tying Marijwa to Earth. Emu sits at the center of the world, kind of physically and thematically, and where was the Earth situated on the O'Hara Orrery? The center of the solar system. This ties into the heliographic theories the community had for a while, with many speculating Luffy will become the new center of the solar system. After all, it is called the solar system, like, you know, sun. Anyway, point is, Emu is the Earth God, or a manifestation of the Earth. Now, I mentioned the Fire Thief motif in the intro, right? In short, the Fire Thief myth usually involves the relationship between gods and humans through technology, with gods often synonymous with heaven and humans synonymous with earth. Seeing as the motif is prevalent throughout the story, we can assume Emu's goal is to stop humans advancing past a certain point. But why? If Emu is the Earth God, this fits well, as Emu's aim likely stems from a desire to protect the Earth in some sense. A classic tale that's been told for thousands of years about humans overstepping their boundaries and destroying their own environment. And now Emu is here to protect it. What is interesting is we call the One Piece world the Blue Planet, but strangely the term Earth is present in One Piece, with Skypia's Earth God and Verth, perhaps meaning the Blue Planet was once also called Earth and could even possibly be our own in some weird Planet of the Apes twist. So with Emu as the Earth God in mind, past incidents like the earthquake in Skypea that trapped Nolan, and the mysterious fact that the TreeTheWolf bridge is still not finished after being constructed over 700 years, they take on a bit of a different angle now. Maybe the reason why TreeTheWolf is never built is because the land it's trying to reach is moving away from the bridge, or is no longer there. And with Nolan, perhaps he was actually trapped by some sort of manifestation of the Earth God or Emu in a rage after cutting down the trees or cutting the head off the snake. In summary, there is plenty of clues since chapter 1 all the way up until now that Emu is tied deeply to the Earth. There's also clues that gods exist, one of them being the Earth God. So putting these two together, we can assume that Emu has some divine relationship with the Earth, meaning Emu's actions are probably driven by a need to protect the Earth from human-caused destructions, viewing humans as a threat. Meanwhile, Emu also appears to have a grander plan that's secret, even to the Gorosei potentially, that seems to require humans, as we see with the Celestial Dragons. The Mother Flame incident at Lalesia demonstrates Emu's indifference to human life, so why does Emu need the Celestials? The Celestial Dragons wearing helmets and having runny noses without them suggests that they are frail and vulnerable, perhaps due to the controlled conditions Emu keeps Marijwa in. The idea of Marijwa as a controlled environment, like a greenhouse, aligns with the Gorosei referring to humans as insects. Marijwa itself acts as a nexus for the four gods, as it parts the sea, indicative of the rain god, it encapsulates the Eve tree, evoking the forest god, sits atop the red line, and houses the earth god, and is in constant daylight, implying ties to the sun god. Big Mum's Jolly Roger adds to this, as it depicts a tree, sun, and water, all of which likely connects to Soul, and thus Big Mum's soul fruit. I have covered this in a Big Mum video like 6 months or a year ago, but if you have not seen Big Mum's Jolly Roger, I don't care about the video, pause it and Google that image, because it's wild. It's wild. But anyway, what does Emu actually need the humans for, like I was saying? Is it a situation like the Matrix where humans are batteries? Or are human souls used by Emu as suggested by StrawHatLucas' Faustian deal theory? Some even think there could be some body snatching going on, particularly with Lily. Now, it could be that Emu uses humans for a specific purpose that ties to ancient lineage, considering how important lineage is to the story and how the Celestial Dragons seem to be, you know, high class of people. Alternatively, Emu might need humanity to feel emotion. Emotions are tied to Haki, as seen with Garp's and Sanji's love punch and love kick. Haki might be stronger than devil fruits, as it's definitely been suggested, so it could be Emu is trying to attain some power usually only humans would have, which is some ironic reversal of the Fire Thief motif. What I mean by that is the gods, the humans want this god technology, but I imagine that Oda's going to twist it so that Emu actually wants human technology, so there's this reverse going on, you know, this paradox. Furthermore, if Emu feeds on the emotions of the celestial dragons, it may give credence to the fact that her will has been corrupted by their sort of rotten personalities and greed. After it was revealed that York was the traitor, I speculated for ages that it was because of the greed aspect, right? She shares an aspect with the celestial dragons, and we've just had that confirmed in 1023. So greed definitely seems to be connotated as negative by Oda. Okay, I'll touch back on greed in a second, but for now, emotions can also manifest devil fruits through desire, as explained by Vegapunk again. Not only this, but it gets really tricky when you think that a fruit is a product of the earth and the trees and water and sun, but also here a product of desire, kind of connecting all the four gods together with the humans to produce these mystical, powerful fruits. This is what I believe Big Mum's Jolly Roger does indicate, is the different elements required creating the soul fruit user, you know, or the soul fruit. And then humans maybe came from the soul fruit or from the soul power. Also, if desire is a type of will, and when will is physically manifested, we call it Haki, I guess this would mean that devil fruits are actually a form of Haki or made from Haki. So as you can see, when you look into the meta of devil fruits and all the things that might make them up, it's extremely complex, and yeah, Oda's got a lot going on there, so it'll be interesting to see that unpacked. Other human elements seem to play a part here too. For example, Kube demonstrated faith as another powerful will in the story. And the most important of all might be imagination. These emotions may actually act as a fuel source as well, but first let's quickly look at what other gods are significant to the One Piece endgame. Okay, so to begin, let's take a quick look at the other three gods mentioned in Skypiea now we've covered Emu. By paying close attention to god references throughout the story, we can decipher that Oda probably has 5 particular characters that embody 5 gods, 4 of which are mentioned explicitly in Skypiea. Firstly, the forest god in the One Piece world actually predominantly surrounds Skypiea, believe it or not. We know this mainly because the inhabitants worship trees and say their ancestors travel into them after death, kinda like a tree heaven. But there are some other clues too. Verth is very sacred in Skypiea, and it's the only place where plants and trees can grow in the clouds. This is opposed to, for example, Wano, where Greenball was just walking around and things were sprouting up. The Lunarians are deeply connected to Skypiea and Sky Racers, and are referred to as gods that live up high, living on the Red Line even before the Holy Land Marijois. The one Lunarian we have met is called Arbor, which you might have heard is a reference to trees. Tree fever was a prevalent disease in the Skypiea flashback and was cured by Noland cutting down the sick trees, which is a pattern we are going to see a lot of as we go through the different gods. Now, of course, Greenball not only has the forest fruit, but the word green in his name and a green color scheme, so clearly Oda is showing some relationship between the fruit and the character, like we see with Luffy and Sun God Nika. Probably worth mentioning at this point is Greenball has the forest fruit and was first introduced feeding off the sun through photosynthesis, which is really strange because it kind of makes it seem like the forest god needs the sun god. Maybe here Oda is suggesting that gods share a relationship or potentially some hierarchy or reliance on each other. This would give a good basis for us to require a balance of the gods, you know, like having all of them in their right place so that everything can just work smoothly. And on that note, remember where Greenball was sunbathing? It wasn't in the One Piece world in general, it was in Marijois, somewhere we've only ever seen it to be sunny, which is very, very strange. If anyone does want some more information on Greenball and Luffy's relationship, just drop me a DM or something, because I think he might have been in a love triangle with Dragon and Luffy's mum. But yeah, that's a whole nother tin of beans. Okay, so let's take a look at the Sun God, probably the god we have the most info on, and definitely the most important to the reader, seeing as it concerns our protagonist. It's important to understand that sun and flame in One Piece are tied. Not quite one and the same, but very closely tied thematically, just like water and rain is. And this is evidenced when Luffy turns into Nika for the first time at the same time as the fire lanterns at the festival have their messages written in and sent into the sky. What happens to Luffy? He dies and comes back to life. What happens to the messages? They're sent to people who have died and are, back to life in heaven. During this fire festival, we also saw the gods highlighted with the Tamui symbol that most people associate with Enel. Fire plays an integral role in One Piece as it consumes will and makes it burn brighter, you could say, whereas cold preserves will, which I've been talking about for years. Additionally, fire was the integral fuel source of Egghead Island, going as far to fuel a weapon of mass destruction on the Leisure. And let's not forget Lilith's line about, oh, only if we had an eternal flame, Luffy. Fire as a fuel source was prevalent throughout the Egghead arc, as were ties to the South Blue, i.e. Sorbet Kingdom. Sorbet has a sunny, hot climate with palm trees, likely a nod to the sun god. Again, we see another disease here, and this one just so happens to be connected to the sun. Of course, I'm talking about Sapphire Scale, the disease shared by Ginny and young Bonnie. Both characters alongside Kuma are associated with Nika and lived in a church. Obviously, church is tied to God. Nika featured in this arc more than any other, in fact. The Saint Briss was one of the earliest mentions of the South Blue, and it has Saint in the name, and fell out of the sky, both of which have biblical connotations. Okay, so next up we have the Rain God. So when Lily Nefertari went missing, did it cause it to stop raining in Alabasta? Most fans are probably familiar with the panel where Vivi screamed and it started raining. There are a couple of other strange panels like this too, where Vivi, for example, looks out a window and stares at the rain, says some eerie stuff. In chapter 119, Vivi says, we'll bring the rain back to Alabasta together. That will come up again. When you consider how Alabasta would be liberated, it would be through rain. Alabasta and the Nefertari are connected to Pluton, and what happened to Pluton after it was hidden in Wano? It rained so much people had to evacuate the country. Not exactly what you'd expect from the genius masonry of Wano, those who are supposed to be the best in the world, etc, etc. So there's surely more going on to this situation. The Alabasta arc also featured a rain machine at the end, as well as dance powder throughout, tying rain to the Nefertaris and Alabasta even further. I mean, Vivi's hair is blue, so it does kind of seem likely Oda maybe is telling us something, but we'll see. Remember, Emu was holding a picture of Vivi amongst the others, and she's recently been kidnapped, so she must hold some special relevance to Emu's plan, as did Lily. Now, the disease that connects to this god is probably the hardest one to trace out of them all, and it's the 5-day disease. Nami got this disease while developing a relationship with Vivi, and interestingly, it takes 5 days in paradise for the Straw Hats to reach Alabasta. The 5-day disease was thought to be extinct around 1,000 years ago, right? Which is because Lily had gone missing and eventually died just under 1,000 years ago. Now Vivi is back, and alongside the Straw Hats, particularly Luffy, suddenly the disease comes back and Nami almost dies. Oda, mwah, chef's kiss. Alrighty, so that's the Earth, Forest, Sun and Rain God briefly covered. I did mention I'd explain how Walkery ties to the North Blue earlier, right? So I'll quickly do that. Basically, throughout his character design, we can see this pattern on his Hoki form, which matches Law's North Blue fashion and a few other people that wear fashion from that area. Not only this, but his name is Top Man Walkery. Top being top of the map, North, Walkery being a reference to his backstory, likely tying to the biggest military faction in the One Piece world outside the world government, the Vinsmokes, who are, where? The North Blue. If you want more information on where each of these Gorosei members are from and potentially their backstories or their motivations to join Emu, you can find that video below called War of the Void Century, I think. With these gods in mind, let's take a look at what Oda is gonna do with energy. I theorize that gods are synonymous with energy sources in One Piece. A simple way of explaining this would be that the sun god Nika enables solar power, the rain god allows hydropower, the earth god enables fuel from the ground, and the forest god provides wood for burning, for example. This is a very on-the-nose way to describe what I mean, but Oda is far more poetic in the way he weaves the ideas throughout the story. But what evidence actually connects the two? By which I mean energy and gods. The most direct case is with Enel. Enel was the self-proclaimed kami, right, or god of Skypiea, and it was later revealed in his cover story his devil fruit ability just happens to be the energy source for the moon city Burka, which is a city that just so happens to be the name of Enel's supposed birthplace in Skypiea. All clearly connected, but why? Before I answer that, let me give another piece of evidence, which is more abstract and more Oda-esque. Luffy's ability to fuel revolution and liberation can be considered an energy source. Luffy himself can be seen as a fuel source through his innate ability to inspire rebellion and get people going, igniting the spirits of those oppressed and downtrodden. His unwavering determination and infectious enthusiasm acts as a catalyst, energizing others to rise up against tyranny. Luffy's presence and actions provide hope and a sense of possibility, transforming fear and despair into courage and resolve. By challenging powerful adversaries and demonstrating the strength of his convictions, he empowers others to believe in their own potential for change. This motivational energy, like fuel, spreads rapidly, igniting a collective drive for freedom and justice among those he encounters. Very, very similar to Bello Betty's fruit. So I wonder if we'll see a connection between the two. Again, I could have given more examples, but what's important here is the contrast between the two examples I gave. This is because the moon situation with Enel ties directly into its inhabitants running out of resources and having to leave their land. On the other hand, we have Luffy, who just eats some food and that's it. He's powered right back up. In other words, some energy sources need a resource as fuel, whereas others like Luffy seem far more boundless and far less destructive. We see connections between resources and gods as well throughout the manga. In the lore of One Piece, God Valley's name derives from its richness in an as yet unrevealed resource, suggesting some divine significance from its name. This mysterious resource could possess immense value or power, attracting the attention of powerful individuals and organizations. The term god also implies the resource is coveted by the world government or Imu. Again, this is a more on-the-nose example, but Oda has far more intricate cases. In the North Blue Island of Flevance, the resource amber lead is mined from the earth, which now disturbed causes the locals to get a terminal disease. This disease is passed down generationally, reducing the victim's lifespan. But how does this tie to gods? Okay, so what character is from Flevance? Law. And what's Law's special ability? The immortal surgery. So we have a disease affecting lifespan and an ability affecting lifespan. Who did I mention was the Earth God and is tied to the North Blue? Imu, who most believe to have extended lifespan. The resource that they're mining in Flevance is called amber lead, with amber likely being a reference to preservation, as we all remember from Jurassic Park with the mosquitoes and the DNA. Going down the rabbit hole a little bit, it might be that lead is used here as it's alchemically the opposite of gold, the most valuable metal, and the focus of amber lead being white may be a contrast to Imu constantly being black. I do understand that last bit is a reach. So to summarize, Oda is showing us some connections here between God Imu, resources, the subsequent pollution, and immortality. In this particular case, what this probably means, or does to me at least, is that Imu is mining amber lead from her own earth as a resource to extend her life at the cost of the lives of the humans. The only purpose it's been stated to have is to turn things white, so I'm not really sure that that's really relevant to the world government's aims, to be honest. That's something more Michael Jackson based. Now, before we dive into immortality deeper though, let me skim through the pollution side real quick. Another case similar to the amber lead situation is Kaido's pollution from making the smiles. So again, attaining power but at the expense of the meek. Kaido polluted Wano through his ruthless industrialization and exploitation of the land's resources. Under his rule, vast factories were constructed, belching toxic smoke and waste into the air and water, severely contaminating the environment. The once lush and vibrant landscapes of Wano were transformed into a barren, polluted wasteland. Rivers and lakes, previously clear and teeming with life, turned murky and lifeless due to the dumping of industrial waste. The soil, once fertile and capable of producing abundant crops, became poisoned, leading to widespread famine and suffering among the people throughout. Kaido's oppressive regime prioritized weapons production and power at the expense of the natural beauty and health of Wano and its people, leaving the land scarred and its inhabitants in despair. Obviously, Luffy changed a lot of that, and then Green Ball came along with some forest god vibes and started growing a ridiculous amount of plants and trees just by seemingly walking, may I add, which is a Chad move. We see a closely related situation in Dressrosa where SAD was manufactured. SAD was a green substance often marked with radioactive warning signs indicating its pollutive nature. The fighting fish are likely mutations of the huge goldfish already present, combined with the fighting lion, fighting bull, and the local goldfish. All have distinct attributes that can be traced onto the fighting fish pretty easily. So the point I'm making is the mutations in the environment were caused by the pollution of manufacturing SAD to make devil fruits. But how do these two examples tie into gods? Well, Oda, I think, is kind of suggesting here that humans are trying to attain god powers, and that it's very costly to the welfare of the surrounding people, or more specifically the environment. There's consequences to trying to develop this kind of power unnaturally. And at the end of the day, this story is all about power, whether it be the power of friendship, power of imagination, power of your crew, power of fear, or the power of now, which is a super good book. Of course, godhood is also tied to power as well in One Piece. Power can take the form of mystical weapons like devil fruits, as shown with Marijois Dropout, Dofi attempting to make them. Immortality is another one of these god powers, tying to law and possibly Flevance. Emu seeks the ancient weapons, another heavenly power, evident by their names all being gods. Maybe these powers can be considered a curse too. Hody Jones believed he was sent by the heavens, but I actually think it's possible he's mistaken, and in fact Vanderdecken 9 was Vanderdecken I, who'd been sent by the heavens and could not die until he, fulfills his task in scoring Poseidon. Okay, so what I'm saying is, Vanderdecken I, he's cursed with immortality until he completes his mission. There is another example of this, which is Inherited Will, a super important power in the story, and I have got a video probably about 6 months ago talking about how Inherited Will is probably a curse as well. The fact that you don't really have much choice after you die, your will is going to continue, it can't rest, suggests to me that, it's a curse that needs to be resolved, similar to Ryuma and his desecrated grave. So if there are tools or sort of weapons of the gods, like we say with the ancient weapons, what is the most important god power in One Piece going to be revealed to be? Usually at this point I'd probably go all out on trying to push the end of the theory and, show you that this is facts. However, this time I'm going to give you the option, and I'm going to give you two different cases. Okay, so first up we have imagination. Luffy's ability granted to him by the sun god Nika are rooted deeply in imagination. Imagination definitely is a powerful tool in One Piece, and it can have strong effects on a character's power and can even cause physical change. Usopp and Buggy have a great imagination and are often rewarded for it, and a fun little side fact, these two characters have never actually met. Bonnie's ability to alter her age reflects a child's imagination transforming reality. This is going to be super important. I recently dropped an orphan theory on how Emu controls the imagination of children to stop the world from being free, which leads us to that quote that Oda said in the SBS, people used to be able to fly, but now they don't believe they can. Artistic abilities rely on imagination also, and in One Piece these often tie back to Emu specifically. For example, with Giolo we had the Immortal Art and Golden Week's colour palette such as Black Betrayal. So yeah, imagination is definitely one of the big candidates. Next we have an interesting contrast to imagination, which is fear. On Long Ring Long Land, people's bodies morph and stretch, similar to shapeshifting seen with Life Return. Fascinatingly, Usopp and Chopper state they're scared to go on the island, and strangely enough, it's them two that develop the stretchy sickness. These are the only two characters on Long Ring Long Land that are affected by the stretching environment. Also, we see a hare that's stretched, and hares are renowned for being timid and afraid. In contrast, we see calm Tonji is ironically very short, perhaps further suggesting only scared people are affected. If not, somebody in the comments please explain to me why Tonji is so small, and intentionally I will add. It's definitely not an accident. Another example is Big Mum's Devil Fruit ability. It only works on people that fear her. We see a twist on this with Sugar's Devil Fruit, which switches off when she's scared. Chopper scared Kumadori by roaring, which caused Kumadori to lose control of his hair that he'd hardened using Life Return. Yet another example of fear removing or affecting control on the body. Monet was frozen in fear by Zorro. Some less obvious examples could be what we recently saw with Kube's honesty impact, which rather than being suppressed by fear, could instead be amplified by it. This might be why Garp spoke a lot to Kube about coming in clutch at that moment. So it's possible that Garp knew that the fear was going to drive Kube to do a powerful strike. Furthermore, Vivi screams in fear, which perhaps is what causes it to rain. Now lastly, and this is something I've not looked too deeply into, but it's possible Usopp's lies, which sometimes come true, only come true when he's afraid, but I do need to check that. So which one do you think it will be, or will it all just come back to love? Will it all just love? Maybe a range of emotions are needed, like desire, hope, love, faith, etc, etc. Anyways, thanks for making it this far, but now is where we pop off and explain how the treasure on Laugh Tale is actually tied to one particular One Piece god that we all know and love. What is the One Piece, and will Luffy survive using it? Okay, so let's answer these questions. Using the Fire Thief motif again, we can gain a better understanding of the history of the One Piece world. I just listed some god powers such as the ancient weapons, which many believe were not always weapons, but were used as such by the world government. I believe this will be the same with energy and the gods. They can be used for good or they can be exploited, but the cost of exploiting them is extreme. I think this is what the issue with the Ancient Kingdom was, particularly after they peaked and invented one machine greater than any other. I believe this machine is a sun creator. By bringing together the two sovereigns, it might be possible this machine restores the balanced conditions to the world, such as a sun in the center of the solar system, putting Earth back in its rightful place and allowing other satellites to orbit around it naturally. Emu, being aware of this technology, probably does what she can to prevent humans creating another one again, such as kidnapping one of the sovereigns, which would be Lily and then Vivi. But I think there still might be one at Laugh Tale. So let's say the Straw Hats reach Laugh Tale and Luffy and Vivi discover this machine. Luffy's dream would be revealed to be a desire to bring the sun to people. Vivi's we know is to bring the rain back to Alabasta. Combined, their wills and the wills of the Straw Hats activate the machine and restore the balance of the gods, thus fixing the energy situation and the pollution situation, ending the current shit state the world government have created. So there it is, folks. I'd love to go into more detail, but I won't make you sit through any more of me rambling on about pirates and magic. Leave a comment if you did want to ask any questions or correct me, as I'm sometimes, just sometimes, human and can make mistakes. If you're new to the channel, then hello, my name is Kushi, obviously my real name. I make One Piece theories, a few of which have collected some dubs since we started, very recently actually as well, and I also stream alongside the Frontline of the theory community on the Last Arc YouTube channel. If you wanted to share your own theories, you're more than welcome to join in Discord or DM me directly, and if you wanted an idea incorporated into a video, feel free to bring it up. You can support Kushi on Patreon or become a member if you want to join the cause, and we'll get these videos longer, more detailed, higher quality, which is something I am going to focus on now, so apologies for the delay. We have some pretty big reveals coming soon as well, possibly including a couple 2-hour videos, but I won't say too much yet. But sub for that, sharing is caring, stroke a cat, and thanks for watching. Bye. Did you know Big Mom is still alive? Did you know she revealed the secret of Zebek's devil fruit? Did you know Big Mom was said to be the god of destruction? We've come to expose the craziest characters in One Piece with the biggest mysteries in the story. With that, I promise you, this is the spiciest Big Mom video you've ever seen. So get ready for some huge reveals. Believe it or not, Big Mom answers almost every major mystery in One Piece, from possession and control to the secret histories, such as God Valley. We're going to show the secrets and explain how they all tie into Oda's master plan. We're also going to show you that Big Mom is fully alive, that's right. So like and sub and let's get into this. So how do we know Big Mom is alive? In chapter 1064, the cover showed Pudding, held captive by Van Alga and Aokiji. It's easy to notice in the colour version of the manga, but if we look closely, we see Pudding tearing up paper and letting the pieces go into the wind. Oda even has the paper heading upwards, suggesting that they've blown off the ship. I'm curious if maybe Aokiji noticed but allowed it to happen, but that's just food for thought. So, why does Pudding do this? To protect Big Mum since her defeat, or to hide the fact Big Mum is still possibly a player in the game. A Vivre card normally disappears when someone dies, so at the very least it is proof that she is alive. Other times she adheres to her hunger pangs and lays waste to entire islands. So let's look at Carmel's influence over Big Mum. Starting with the basics, we see ties to Carmel in Big Mum's name, with Mum referencing the mother in Mother Carmel. This is likely symbolic of the influence Carmel still has over Linlin. Additionally, Big Mum's flashbacks contain some of Carmel's own flashbacks. This is super weird because the flashbacks are stylized as Big Mum having regressions, suggesting Carmel's flashbacks have become her own, and their minds are blending together as one. We also see Big Mum has over 100 children. Now, Carmel was called Sister, indicating she's a nun. This is ironic because nuns can't have children, yet Carmel happens to adopt loads of orphans. But on to the big stuff. Big Mum is shown to have an affinity for not just any food, but sweet food. Again suggestive of Carmel's influence, whose name is an obvious nod to caramel. Also, one of her favourite foods is said to be chocolate. What's her other favourite food though? Lamb. We see lamb also referenced in the name of Carmel's orphanage, Lamb's House or Sheep's House in some of the other versions, but lamb in the Japanese. And simply put, it is symbolic of sacrifice. You've likely heard the expression lamb to the slaughter. This is because lambs are seen as a symbol for purity or innocence, which reflects Carmel selling children to the world government. Obviously that didn't happen in Big Mum's case because, as we all know, she seems to have eaten the children of Lamb's House on her 6th birthday. During the scene, we even see the children reaching out to stop Big Mum while she eats, and we see Big Mum's eyes covered in red hearts, something I'll talk about later. But is it possible that when Carmel was eaten by Big Mum, she managed to somehow gain some influence over her, perhaps through the nature of the Soru Soru no Mi, which Big Mum got the powers of? I think not only did Carmel influence Big Mum directly, she also influenced the events of the world in which Big Mum will soon become involved. Carmel was a huge figure among the child trafficking trade, overseen by Cypherpol on behalf of the world government. After noticing Big Mum's strength, probably for the first time when Big Mum kills a bear with a small slap, Carmel demands an extreme price from the world government for Linlin. When questioned on the amount, she cites her involvement in a marine scheme 38 years ago, referring to the flashback where she freed giants. It's worth noting that this statement might imply the Marines controlled the weather, considering a beam of light hit Carmel. If Carmel was working with the Marines, then who wanted to execute the giants, I wonder? What we can assume is the Marines and Carmel pulled off this stunt, as they called it, in order to befriend the nation of Elbaf and start recruiting giants such as John to the cause. Furthermore, she goes on to discuss one final big score, which is the term used by Sengoku when describing Xebec's reason for going to God Valley. Seeing as Big Mum was at God Valley, it's very strange we get this connection. It may even suggest that Big Mum used Carmel's information about one big score to give to Xebec. Now, Carmel and Big Mum's time in Elbaf significantly ties to the sun god. During the flashbacks, we see Elbaf during the Yule festival, which represents the death and rebirth of the sun. Carmel's birthday is the 21st of December, which is the day of Yule. In the flashback, we also saw this very event happen physically when Carmel used her fruit to give life to a raging fire and animating it, turning it into a small sun and giving it consciousness. The ability she used to do this was called Geburtstag. However, she said it in two distinct halves, with the translation meaning birth, day. I'll touch more on the significance of Carmel using a German phrase later, so hold that in the brain for now. She also mentions to not thank her for what just happened, but to thank the sun god. She calls this new homie Pandora, which means all-giving from the origin myth, Works and Days. This makes sense considering the sun in most cultures is revered as all-giving, as it provides energy needed for all things to grow. These strange connections to the sun indicate Carmel knew her stuff. She's a couple years older than Kureha, and Kureha also knows a suspicious amount about the world's truths. I think it's possible Carmel knew about Joy Boy and believed Linlin could be a candidate to bring about the dawn. Anywho, after all of this, Carmel agrees to be exiled along with Linlin, showing Carmel still valued Linlin for some reason. Not long after this is when Big Mum eats everyone, and when we believe she got Carmel's Soru Soru powers. Well, I say everyone, but I don't actually mean everyone, because present in the background at the time was Streusen and one lonely old giant who witnessed everything. The giant claims that what he saw was horrific, which to me rules out the possibility that the children were simply abducted. Not only that, but you can't tell me it's just coincidence the man with the ability to turn things into food just happened to be there at the time. Whatever revolted the giants seemed to make Streusen happy, and eerily, while he's watching, he just so happens to be be cutting a tree log into food. What this dark imagery shows is the idea that Big Mum is eating flesh and gaining the soul of Carmel and her fruit. In One Piece, souls live in trees after death, so Stroizen is cutting soul into meat. It's the exact reverse of what Big Mum's doing at the time, which is Oda going completely crazy with it. Immediately after, we see Stroizen approach Lin Lin, careful to keep his distance, and ultimately instill within her his own dream, telling her directly this is what you want. He also mentions they will start building where they are, suggesting Whole Cake Island is actually where the lamb's house used to be, as hinted at in the landscape. So Stroizen's manipulation of Big Mum begins, and shortly after he discovers her abilities when she animates flowers in front of him. The rest of that page is a montage of Big Mum becoming a fearsome conqueror of lands, threatening to eat people. This is Charlotte Lin Lin under Stroizen's influence. During Big Mum's flashback, we see Big Mum lose weight while fasting, which I think suggests Stroizen could be using food to control Big Mum, and would explain the big in her name. This is also backed up by the fact Big Mum isn't big while on Rock's crew, but to speedrun some more brief connections, here's a few. I mentioned earlier Carmel has an ability that's named in German. Stroizen's name and his favourite food are both German references too. These most likely connect to the German fable Hansel and Gretel, which involve a very similar contrast of themes, such as candy juxtaposed to eating children. Big Mum has the soul fruit, and we know souls have connections to music in One Piece. Well, it just so happens Stroizen is an opera singer who often sings to Big Mum with dark lyrics. Despite being the ripe old age of 92, he's still significantly powerful and has been shown to do some crazy stuff, not only physically, but with his fruit too, which I believe shows he's awakened. In chapter 872, Beijing makes a comment that Stroizen is suspicious and probably strong in a fight. I've always wondered how every island was turned into food as well. Did Stroizen do all of that? Even the ocean was made of juice and the clouds turned to cotton candy. It also seems like each thing that has become part of Big Mum's soul becomes linked with her emotions. When she sings, they sing. When she's out of her mind, they seem the same way, further highlighting this theme of control around Big Mum. I mentioned earlier that she wasn't big when she was on Rock's crew, right? Not only that, but she didn't have a childish disposition either. Oda drew Big Mum's stages pretty distinctly and also highlighted it in her SBS. Some believe Blackbeard, the owner of the Yami fruit, has ties to Xebec, and some of these ties involve the Yami fruit itself. So what does the Yami do? It negates the ability of devil fruits, right? Which means if Carmel's control over Big Mum is through the Soul Sword fruit, then when Big Mum's on Rock's crew, she wouldn't have Carmel's influence on her anymore if Xebec had the Yami. And so what happens? She becomes free, she becomes a pirate, loses weight and behaves like an adult. In short, Big Mum's weight and name denotes who she is as a character at the time. At God Valley, she was known no longer Lin Lin or Big Mum, but instead Charlotte Lin Lin of the Rocks Pirates. Rocks liberated her essentially, and it's possible, by doing so, Lin Lin could access Carmel's memories and tell Xebec about the one big score. I've been scratching my brain about what Big Mum meant when she said she gave Kaido his powers, and this might also tie into the Yami too. Now, briefly, moving on to the amnesia thing, the influence over Big Mum might waver between Carmel and Stroizen, and when Big Mum bangs her head, we see her start having amnesia issues, which likely represents cognitive dissonance. This idea is scattered across all types of literature, and the bang on the head, Big Mum, you know, after that she becomes sweet, childlike, she seems free from any strange influence. However, later on in the story, we see Big Mum becomes possessed again by her hunger pangs. This brings us to who I think the third influence is on Big Mum. Big Mum was already influenced heavily by sweets before she met Carmel. Lin Lin's mother was distinctly drawn to look similar to Big Mum through her pink hair and the shape of her nose, indicating a direct descent. No funny business with that parent. And her father, the manga belly shows him, which some may see as sus, but weirdly the anime showed him in full and he was pretty bland with nothing significant of note. Why do I bring this up? Well, because it would appear, despite being a normal born child, Lin Lin isn't normal, isn't a normal human, and instead has inherited some significant will. The chapter of her abandonment is called Natural Born Destroyer, and Jarul, the chief of giants, calls her the One Piece. Yes, this does reflect the fact she eats too many sweets, however, there's something far more sinister going on there too. Big Mum's teeth indicate some animalistic deeper nature, which I bet you comes from some form of will she inherited. Big Mum is not a giant, but somehow naturally huge and strong. She also defeated the giant chief with ease, demonstrating monstrous skill. The first time we see Lin Lin have her hunger pangs after 6 days of fasting for winter solstice. This is similar to how Kaido only showed 6 paths of the Buddha, and is symbolic of how they both failed the last stage on their journey to complete their destiny. She went on a rampage before destroying the village of Elbaf and attacking the giants. Dead set on killing her was the chief because he recognised her as the god of destruction, a natural-born destroyer. This ties into the prophecy of Ragnarok, when gods and natural disasters will lead to the end of the world. So I think there might be some ancient powerful will or soul inside Big Mum causing havoc. The soul fruit is likely to be one of the oldest devil fruits, and the power to give and take life could be argued to make someone a god. The sorrow user can potentially imbue a fruit with a soul or will, and the fruit will become a strange form of devil fruit in a sense, which may tie into their creation. This is Big Mum's Jolly Roger. It depicts the sun, the sea, and a soul aspect coming out of Big Mum's head. Out of the soul aspect grows a tree. Naturally, we can deduce fruits that grow on these trees will contain souls, perhaps demonstrating again how devil fruits came about. This could be a sun god. This could be a representation of other gods too, such as the sun god top left, the rain god bottom left, and the forest god, which is the tree. Either way, all have the Odor swirls that represent energy in the One Piece world. All of this hints that Big Mum has deep ties to soul energy and creation in One Piece. There's a short description of how Big Mum's powers work in chapter 863, and we also learn just a scrap of Big Mum's Vivre card can be used to control her homies. Interestingly, the effect of Big Mum's power can only be used on people who are afraid, which is pretty nutty when you consider that on Long Ring Longland, both the characters that were afraid started stretching. Not only this, but Big Mum's ability deals with lifespan, a highly significant power in the One Piece world, currently relevant to the story through Bonnie's abilities. Considering this checkered fate, it's possible the fruit has an ancient will of its own, similar to the Gomu. I mentioned Joro calling her god of destruction, which ties into the fact that she says she'll make the Straw Hats pay for their sins, the word sins being a reference to the Straw Hats being the enemies of God, like the D-Clan. So in summary, is it trauma that causes Big Mum's hunger pangs, or is it the hunger pangs that keep causing Big Mum trauma? Weirdly, when Big Mum was starving in Wano, she never had these hunger pang issues until her memory started to return. She did get mad about Luffy eating all the red bean soup at Udon prison, but like a childish temper tantrum, because she wanted to share that soup with the villagers that were kind to her, as opposed to the major hunger pang meltdowns we've seen before. The hunger pangs we know unfortunately involve ending her own children and weird scenes of cannibalism. Remember the bizarre scene where creep puffs in a hotel are shown living like people? They also react like people when Big Mum goes to eat them. Big Mum eating things that are alive is creepy and further suggests she is capable of eating people too. Even the trees in Whole Cake ask whose food will they end up as, talking about Luffy, Carrot and Nami. Earlier I mentioned the love hearts in Big Mum's eyes as she ate the children. Now I think these hearts may actually be a parallel to the red eyes she gets when she goes into a rage mode, like in Elbaf. This is likely what meant she couldn't see the children as she ate them, because she was figuratively blinded. She was possessed by her influence. I think Big Mum has the god of destruction's will inside her, and just like other influences, it takes a great toll on Big Mum's mind. I theorise that this will completely take over Big Mum in Elbaf and wreak havoc once again amongst the giants. And that'll be her introduction. She'll come in quite hot, I think. There'll be a battle going on or just about to go on. And she'll come in hot, coming for revenge, straight for Luffy. Okay, so there's a lot of crazy points, but what does it all mean to the story? And what's going to happen next? When you add all this up, we get a look at one terrifying picture. Big Mum has been conquering and killing devil fruit users for years, potentially meaning she is getting Stroizen to turn people into food and feeding them to her children. This would give them the specific powers that are relevant to their names. This definitely draws from Hansel and Gretel, with Gretel killing the witch and escaping with her treasure, which here is the Soul Fruit. Since Carmel's death, Big Mum went on to be liberated by rocks and the power of the Yami Yami, freeing her from one influence yet putting her under another. After word of Zebek's demise at God Valley spread, Stroizen sought out Big Mum, took control of her once again, and without Zebek in his way, began building Whole Cake Island where Lamb's house originally was. Most importantly, the influence that was plaguing her since before all of this is the will of the natural-born destroyer, possessing her from time to time completely and going on a rampage until Lil Lim passes out, similar to Cavendish. This might be indicative that a key to possession relates to dreams, hence why it leaves the subject tired afterwards, or returning to their own dreams when the possession is released. We do see Big Mum sleep after some of these freakouts. We see it with Cavendish too. So, there you have it. Big Mum is officially the craziest character in One Piece in terms of lore. There are still some mysteries to be solved, however, such as what's going on with her hat. and her afro. If Big Mum comes back in Elbaf, there's going to be some serious issues popping off, I can promise you. Her reintroduction might be the catalyst for Ragnarok, and no doubt we'll see the god of destruction manifest and cause havoc once again. Don't forget she cut down trees by accident in Wano, which could be foreshadowing that she's going to cut down the Adam tree that Elbaf lives on. Stroizen's old as fudge, so he's probably going to get off by some B or C character, and Carmel's full true nature will probably be revealed to Big Mum. If Tontattas are fairies that live on Greenbit, does that make them green fairies? If Shanks has future sight, what's he doing supposedly testing Barto? Don't get me wrong, Barto crushed it, but you know what I mean. Sup people of the internet, it's Den Kushi, and today we're having a really cool look into a strong theory involving the green fairy absinthe the Giants gave Luffy and the Straw Hats, and the small potion Shanks gave to Barto. Don't forget we have some cool merch and giveaways going out now with free postage for members, so get your orders in ASAP before everything's gone if you did want something. If you have any questions about the theory or any corrections, just throw them in the comments or hit me up on Discord, and without further ado, subscribe and let's start cooking. So, the Straw Hats, the Sunny and the Giants leave Elbaf with the boats side by side. Couple chapters later, Sentomaru is seen rowing away from Egghead 2, so maybe Sentomaru will join us shortly. Anywho, everyone tries to party but gives up after just a single drink because Luffy is so bummed out over the whole Vegapunk death situation. Shortly after, Luffy eats some grapes, has a chat with Lilith, and everyone's happy again. So, back to partying, where someone thinks it's a good idea to give the Straw Hats a very strong alcohol called absinthe, a drink that in the real world is traditionally made with flowers and medicinal plants. Amongst these chapters, there's some scenes dotted here and there showing the reader other locations and what's going down. Included in this is a little side story where Shanks gives Barto a supposed poison and tells him to give it to Luffy. Barto drinks the poison instead, but survives as it's not actually poison. Big surprise. And he sails away happily until Yasop steps up and yeets the entire ship into the sea with one bullet. So that's pretty much our intro. And now here is the main course. The drink was said to be absinthe. Absinthe is giga strong, right? The name was Green Fairy. Green Fairy evokes Peter Pan vibes, which isn't the first Peter Pan references we've ever had in One Piece. And here probably ties into the whole sustained childhood development issues we'll get into with Loki and the Lego set vibes, right? Which in comparison we did see with Big Mum, somebody who's in her 70s, I believe, but is regressive constantly. It's her daughter that ties to Loki, and it's Nami that's been taken all of a sudden, and Nami obviously connects to Big Mum through Zeus. So there could be something going on here with Big Mum, particularly as we do expect her to arrive back in the story reasonably soon. We also got the 4 bridges and their names revealed in the chapter previous. So now we ask, what happens when you put 4 seas together? You get the All Blue, a place where fish and other species from around the world can mix. And so what happens when you put 4 bridges together? You get the All Land, a place where people and all sorts of other species can mix. From the All Blue, Sanji says, you get special fish, or at least you can make recipes that can only come from the All Blue. They're exclusive to that mix of 4 seas. The 4 bridges we were told about are all named after alcohol. So is it possible that in the same sense there's a particular alcohol that you can only get or create from the All Land, so to speak? Okay, well, what's significant about alcohol that comes from all around the world? It's because it's indicative of the whole Binks sake vibes, going to deliver it all around the world, east to west, north to south, as the lyrics indicate. But how does this tie into the Green Fairy absinthe? Well, in the chapter, absinthe was said to make people hallucinate. This is based around the real-life mythos of absinthe, as many people who are already familiar with the drink are probably familiar with the term Green Fairy. The reason for these hallucinatory ties are due to a chemical called thujone, or wormwood, and in large doses when people drink it in absinthe, it can cause them to hallucinate. Will of Fire in the TLA Discord pointed out that absinthe usually is used as a base to mix other drinks with and dilute it considering its strength. And also it comes from, as I said, wormwood, which might have some ties to Elbaf, worms tying to the snakes, wood tying to the Adam tree, but We'll see about that. In One Piece, however, there is something else going on here, I believe. In the One Piece world, the fairy part of the name is likely indicative of the whole Elbaf fable vibes, meaning it's an Elbafi drink, but the green part of the name is where it gets way more significant. The green part of fairy, I believe, ties to an important but mysterious substance in the One Piece world, yet to be revealed in its raw form. I also believe that this substance is used in the making of Binks Sake. This may be a mysterious resource that was at God Valley, implied further by Thriller Bark connections to Binks Sake, and people speculating that Thriller Bark was once a part of God Valley. Oda's left breadcrumbs highlighting the importance and properties of this resource, particularly the fact it is green. Now, what's a precious green mineral called? An emerald. So whatever this mineral is, its origins could very well tie to the Emerald City, a place that is also yet to be revealed. But back to the breadcrumbs I mentioned, they are pretty distinct and pretty easy to trace. The most recent example would be green blood, which is a man-made green substance synthesized using lineage factor of devil fruit users in order to mimic a devil fruit's ability, with the substance itself acting as the subject's blood. This is by far the most developed usage of whatever green chemical is behind all these weird mutations. And in short, green blood allowed devil fruits to be imbued with cyborgs, which interestingly at the end of the arc is contrasted by Joy Boy putting Haki inside a cyborg, by which I mean the knot that contained Joy Boy's super powerful Haki. Much like green blood, SAD was a man-made green chemical that facilitated the mutation of animal forms, and were used to make zone fruits, pretty much exactly the same as what we saw with the green chemical Sick. First introduced in chapter 690, the vat that contained SAD discovered by Law had a prominent nuclear symbol on the center of the tank. Nuclear is often characterized as green and can be seen associated with mutation in other media. It's further suggested the pollution made by crafting SAD seems to have made the fighting fish, which we can tell from their resemblance to the fighting bull, fighting lion, and giant goldfish. These fighting fish mutated by green SAD just so happen to guard an island with a completely different aesthetic to the connecting Dressrosa Island, and it's called Green Bit. It's worth noting negotiations for SAD also took place on Green Bit. The only other place in the world that looks like Greenbit, indicating its possible origins, is the Greenstone Forest, which is in the Boyne Archipelago, and is the home to pop greens. Pop greens are plants that take on human forms, highlighted by the plants' names, for example, such as Human Drake. The other part of the Boyne Archipelago is where Big Mum's Forest of Gluttony resides, and Big Mum, as the sole soul fruit user, has some strange green spirit that comes out of her. This is also seen with Brook, whose spirit often becomes disembodied and takes on the same green soul vibes. Brook naturally brings us back to Binks Sake through the song he and his crew sang, particularly to Laboon. Okay, maybe them last couple bits were starting to reach a little ever so slightly, but the point is, if you take alcohol from all around the world over these bridges and mix it together and then add a little bit of whatever this green stuff is, then what happens? Well, green-haired Barto might actually be the one to find out. We know that people get sick when they go to certain islands. We know that some people get sick when they go to the most important island in the story, Laugh-Tale. Whether this only affects devil fruit users, which is why Roger decided to not eat a devil fruit, or there's more to it, we're yet to be told, but either way we can be sure there's more to it that will get explained later. We can assume Luffy's going to Laugh-Tale, right? With the rest of the Straw Hats, and so with that many people going, we can pretty much be sure Oda will again include someone getting sick as to tie up that whole thread and give it an explanation. So maybe there's a prevention to this sickness altogether. Remember when Arthur did that mega theory about how the One Piece is sake cups, and the guys get together and drink Binks Sake and sing the song yada 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 and the story ends? Well, Binks Sake certainly is super significant, so I could definitely picture it being a part of the process that the Straw Hats need to engage in order to reach Laugh-Tale. So maybe what Shanks gave to Barto to give to Luffy was in fact Binks Sake. It certainly wasn't what he said it was, and a dude like Shanks doesn't need to test Barto with poison when he has such an intense future sight, while Barto is a puny little Luffy simp. After what happens to Barto when he leaves the island, we can be sure that Shanks isn't necessarily concerned about his welfare, so why not use real poison? I believe it's because Shanks was trying to give the properties of Binks Sake to Luffy as a devil fruit user, otherwise he'd get sick when he stepped foot on Laugh-Tale. Not only that, but I think it's made from alcohol that's brought from the four corners of the world kind of thing, and that it contains a trace of this green mineral which we see being used in other devil fruit applications. So, in conclusion, I think Binks Sake is alcohol, united from around the world, combined with emerald. I believe that it was originally made in the Emerald City, and the substance was probably resourced from God Valley. This is why when years later Thriller Bark breaks off, it still embodies the whole Binks Sake theme, particularly through Laboon as its main character. I believe Binks Sake has great properties and can facilitate a transformation within devil fruit users. This might be the reason why the world government prohibits Binks Sake, which we can tell because it's only transported by pirates, which we glean from the line about having a skull and crossbones on their sails. Perhaps Binks Sake negates the effects of devil fruits entirely. After all, Barto didn't put any barrier up when he left Shanks, which was obviously a mistake, lol. I believe Shanks gave this potion to Barto to give to Luffy, so Luffy would be able to complete his journey and not be affected by his devil fruit, something that was otherwise foreshadowed by young Buggy, who's a devil fruit user that didn't go on to Laugh-Tale. Interestingly, Luffy doesn't like alcohol, so it'll be interesting to see him explicitly interact with Binks Sake whenever it does happen. Brook's connection with Laboon is symbolic of unification across the far corners of the world, which will be concluded when Laboon reunites finally with his whale friends on the other side of the world, or the Red Line, right? So there it is, folks, a real brief theory about the Green Fairy, Green Blood, and all that business. Am I insane? Are you insane? Are we potentially all insane? Who knows? Leave a comment if you did want to ask any questions or correct me, as I am often just human and I do make mistakes. So if you're new to the channel, then hello, my name's Kushi. I make One Piece theories, a few of which have collected some pretty huge dubs since we've started, and I also stream alongside the Frontline of the theory community with The Last Arc, who you can find in our Discord. If you wanted to share your own theories, you're welcome to join the Discord or DM me directly, and if you wanted an idea incorporated into a video, feel free to bring it up. Just engage with me, you know, we'll cook something up. You can support me on Patreon or become a member if you want to join the cause, and we'll get these videos longer, more detailed, and just generally give it a bit more of a boost and just provide videos more frequently. If you made it this far, you've just won some absinthe. Let me know what color fairy you want below. Sharing is caring. Frankie will get the pawpaw fruit. Peace.
What if Oda has been keeping the secret of the One Piece near and dear to his heart for a reason? Spoiler warning to all my corazones. I think I figured out what the One Piece is. What if the One Piece is a living entity that produces its own unique form of free, everlasting energy? This energy manifests itself into will and dreams. In my opinion, one of the most important aspects of the story is sound and rhythm. Oda has made it very clear that sound itself is crucial to understanding what the One Piece is. Look at all the ways Oda has tried to tell us this. Binks Sake, the voice of all things, Laugh-Tale, the golden bell of Chandora. When struck, it plays a beautiful song called The Singing Voice of the Island. I mean, just look at the currency of the One Piece world. When you take a closer look at it, doesn't it look very familiar to a musical note? And I also think it's funny that out of all the possible crew members that Luffy could have wanted, he wanted a musician the most. Is it because he has always had the drums of liberation? Speaking of drums and hearts, the very first time we hear about the Will of D is on Drum Island. But what's more interesting is the reason why the Straw Hats went to Drum Island in the first place. The heart of the crew contracted a disease on Little Garden from a tick. When first diagnosed, Dr. Kureha said if left untreated, Nami's life would end in 5 days due to what? Heart failure. Take a look at Dr. Hirolik's speech.
Hey, When do you think a person dies? When a bullet from a pistol pierces his heart?
I think Oda was trying to tell us something in Drum Island with all the heart references he made. I mean, let's not forget that Dr. HeroLuck had a fatal heart disease. Let's talk about gold. I always ask myself, why are goldfish orange? Never mind, that's beside the point. Gold in the story of One Piece often symbolizes wealth,
Fame, power. Gold Roger.
Gold is actually a good conductor of the world's energy. The ancient kingdom could have discovered the truth of gold not just as currency, but as a means of channeling and storing the One Piece's energy. Maybe this is why gold is so coveted in the One Piece world. It has the potential to store and amplify the free energy produced by the world's heartbeat. You see, I was rewatching the anime and I accidentally paused on this scene right here. You see, in this scene, Eno talks to Nami about the City of Gold. And there's a lot of things going on in this picture. For starters, it looks like Shandora is enclosed in a giant bubble. Was this done on purpose? I'll get to bubbles in a bit. Shandora in this screenshot looks like it could have been some type of ancient electrical conductor. Now honestly, this whole section of my theory has some Tartarian Empire vibes to it. And if you see my Meta War video, you know I believe Oda is blending in real-world conspiracy theories into One Piece. For those who may not know about the Tartarian conspiracy, here are some cliff notes. The Tartarian Empire conspiracy is a French theory that suggests that there was a massive, advanced global civilization called Tartaria, ancient kingdom. Now this ancient kingdom has been said to be deliberately erased from history. Void Century. It was said that Tartaria had access to free energy and were wiped away by a giant mud flood. The One Piece world is literally flooding as we speak. The Seraphim. Another thing that connects Dr. Vegapunk and Bubbles is Kuma, the man that uses bubbles to store and release energy. After all, it was Kuma that sent Nami to Witheria. There is no other character that has a close affinity to bubbles like the way Nami does. From using bubbles with her signature weapon, the Climatact, to being actually turned into a soap bubble herself. I want to talk about gold and Nami's connection with it. Her love for treasure may have a deeper meaning. Her desire for gold could be an unconscious recognition of its importance. As a navigator, Nami's role is crucial. After all, she's a big reason why they figured out that the City of Gold was in the Skull's right eye by overlapping the Jaya and Skypiea map. Maybe Oda knew this when he designed the first ever color spread. One more topic I want to bring up is whales. In my opinion, I believe Oda loves to use whales as a reference to Laugh-Tale or the One Piece. Add in the fact that Oda will blatantly draw them with crowns, maybe to symbolize royalty. Neptune's pet, Ho, the giant whale in chapter 471. Color spread 100 and 1000. Yes, Nami and whales have a deeper connection than you thought. One Piece manga chapter 8 gave us Nami's first appearance, along with the first appearance of a whale in the story, in the form of a whale fountain. Gold, sound, and bubbles. All of these things play a pivotal role in what the One Piece can be. First, I want to say I believe that all those theories about the One Piece being inside a giant whale can be true. We have seen island whales. Now what if there exists a world whale? What if the One Piece is not a mere treasure, but the world's actual heart, hidden away for centuries? The heartbeat that it generates produces a sound so beautiful it manifests itself into the form of free energy. After all, whales are known for their complex and sophisticated communication systems, which play a crucial role in their navigation. You see, Nami's unique connections to gold, bubbles, and hearts, especially ours, link her directly to this treasure. You see, for Nami, it's always been about the treasure. And what better way to honor the heart and soul of the crew than by giving her some well-deserved restitution. She is the heartbeat of the Straw Hats' journey, navigating